Off-grid electrical systems don't have to be that complicated anymore. In this last van that I made, it's actually pretty simple. And to show you that, I'm going to build a miniature version of this electrical system outside of the van so that you can see how every single little piece comes together. I won't be going over all the basic components that go into the electrical system. I've done that in a previous video, so if you get lost, then go back and watch that one. It'll be up on the screen right here. So first things first, let's build the wooden box that's going to house all of the electrical components. Anker SOLIX was kind enough to send out one of their power stations so that I would be able to use it to make this video. So I'm going to talk about this product while I build the box carcass. The Anker SOLIX C1000 is their fastest charging 1000 watt hour portable power station. This power station has all of the typical benefits of a power station, allowing you to have power wherever and whenever you need it. Because of the Anker mobile app's ultra fast charge mode, you can charge up this unit in 58 minutes from 0 to 100 using a wall outlet. Even though this power station is small and light, it has 11 charging ports with 1800 watts of total output power. And the inverter in this power station can support a surge of up to 2400 watts of appliances simultaneously, thanks to what Anker is calling surge pad. Basically what you need to know here is that when you first turn on an AC appliance, it goes through a short surge period where it requires more energy at startup than it does while it's running. Refrigerators and microwaves are two things that really benefit from having a high surge capacity. So if you're going to be using any type of AC appliances like that, you're going to want to have a high amount of surge capacity. This power station can be charged up via solar power, a wall outlet, and also a car outlet. And you can even hook up to 600 watts of solar to this. And if 1056 watt hours doesn't end up being enough power for you, you can increase the size of that battery bank by adding an expansion battery, because there's an expansion battery port on the side of this unit. Now, I did get a deal for you guys if you choose to buy this power station right here. You can get $250 off this product for the October Amazon Prime Day promotion period, which means you'll be able to get this unit for $750 instead of $1,000. This promotion only lasts from October 10th to October 11th, so make sure you act quickly if you want to get this deal. Thanks again to Anker SOLIX for sponsoring this video and sending me out this unit so that I could make this video. But now we've got the box built, so let's get to putting the electrical components into the box. I designed the box so that I'd have access to all of the ports of the power station, as well as making those holes big enough that they would act as breather vents so that this system would be able to cool itself down if it ever needed to. I also pre-drilled some holes in the top compartment so that we could have wires coming in and wires going out to run throughout the inside of the van. I will have the plans available for this box if you want to replicate it and just build the same exact one. The front door of this box is magnetic, so that way you can take the door off, pull out any of the components that you want to whenever you need to, or if you want to pull out your power station and use it for something else. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have the right plugs. In the case of this power station, in order to pull the 12 volt, I'm going to be using this wire right here. This is a very thin gauge wire. If you're going to be doing this, then make sure that you get the proper sized wire. Now for the AC power, what I'm going to be using is this regular 3-prong outlet, and on the other end of it is just exposed triplex wire. So you just need to basically order whatever type of plug that is supported on your power station at the maximum output. So I'm going to take my wire that I'm using for the 12 volt first, and I'm going to run that through the hole that I made for the top compartment. I'm going to cut down the center of this, and that's going to expose the 2 wires that are in there. Then I'm going to take my wire strippers and expose a little bit of this. So, So I'm going to put the negative one on one, the positive one on another one. And I'm just gonna do the same thing with my plug. Just put the positive with the positive and the negative with the negative. So now we've extended the length of this. And if you need to do the same thing with your AC cord, then go ahead, but mine is pretty long, so I'm just gonna run this one up through the hole as well. What I like to do is use a box like this. Now, this is pretty cool because it has a space for all of your 12-volt fuses over here. It has a space for all of your AC breakers on this side. But you can buy these two separately and just install them in whatever orientation that you want to. But for this example, I'm gonna be using this box. I will have a link to this in my Amazon product links if you want to use this same exact box. Now, first thing I'm gonna do is turn this box over, and on the back of this box or any other similar box, there's these little punch out holes. And what I'm gonna do is just take a screwdriver or something and just knock some of those out. Actually, I'm just gonna knock all of them out, actually. So with those out of the way, that's where we're going to be pushing our wire through so that we can hook everything up in here. On the 12-volt side, you can see that up at the top here, they've actually given you a little bus bar. Our wire that's coming straight from our battery is going to come into one of these terminals here for the negative and one of these terminals here for the positive. And then our appliance wires are gonna come through these holes here and mount to these screws on this side. And then we're gonna just use the proper size fuse for whatever appliance that is. And our negative wires are all going to connect to these bars down here. And it doesn't actually matter where they go on the negative side because all of the negatives are connected. But in order to do that, we actually need this box to be mounted. So I'm gonna put our front wall thing in there, and I'm gonna stick this box into the hole. Okay, now that that's mounted, I'm gonna take our wire for the 12-volt, and I'm just going to stick that through this hole right here. Take my cutters here and cut it, and it fell back through. That always happens. You can just stick these bare wires into the terminals just like this, but I don't like to do that just because we are using stranded wire. The wire ends up kind of going like this sometimes and just kind of fraying off, and I really don't want any exposed wire touching anything that I didn't intend it to. So what I like to use is these things right here. If you crimp these onto the end of your wire, it just gives it a stronger connection in terminals like this, and it's just gonna crimp it down. And now it's just one solid piece of metal on the end here. Now I'm just gonna take my screwdriver and loosen up one of the terminals here and one of the terminals here. It says negative on this side and it says positive on this side, so that way you can't mix them up. So I'm gonna put my negative one in the negative terminal, and then I'm gonna tighten down this screw. And that's basically just clamping that wire down and grabbing it nice and tight. So if I yank on this, that's not going anywhere. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the positive one. Thing there, tight. And I can pull that back, and there you go. So now that we have supplied power to our fuses, what we need to do is run a few appliances to those fuses. Let's say that this is your wire that you've ran all through your ceiling so that you can wire up your lights, and we're just gonna stick it right into this hole. Now that it's in there, I'm gonna run it through the back of our panel, and we're ready to wire this up. Red one I'm having come through this side right here, because I'm gonna be connecting this up right here to this terminal that is next to F3. Now, F stands for fuse and 3 stands for the third one down. And the reason why I'm using the third one is because on this panel, the first 2 are for max rating of 30 amps. We don't need all of that, so we're gonna start on the third one down. Stick my red cable in there, and now I'm gonna tighten that down. And then I'm gonna take my negative wire and I'm gonna stick that one through down here. You can actually pull this green panel out by pressing down on this tab, and that releases this, and then you can get that out of the way, and that can give you room to get back up in here and stick this in. Tighten that up, give that one a tug, and that one's good. And I'm actually gonna do this again for my other appliance. So for the second one, same thing. I've already stripped my wire and put my little heads on the connector. Put my positive one through the positive hole side and put my negative one through the negative hole side. And I hooked those in the same exact way as I did the first one. So the only thing left to do is add fuses. These are not the correct size fuses for this, but these are example fuses because this is what I have. But I'm going to put the first one onto my F3 and the next one onto my F4. Now I'm gonna wire up my light and my fan, and we're gonna test to make sure that this works. So I just have the fan hooked up directly to the positive and negative. And for the light, I have actually hooked it up to a switch. I know it's a double switch, but I only hooked up one side. This is just all I had for the example. Where's the battery? There's the battery. All I'm gonna do now is plug in this car socket. So it's plugged in. Now I'm gonna hit this button right here, and that's going to activate this port. You just heard a beep, and that was actually this just showing that power has gone to it. Let's test the power by hitting the power button on this fan. And the fan is working. And also it looks like our light is on too, because I guess I left the switch in the on position. Now, one thing that you will notice is that our only on-off situation for this entire system is just straight through the power station. I usually don't like to do that, but I'm doing it for this example. You usually put a master on-off switch in between the power station and the fuse panel. So just something to think about. But now let's wire up the AC side, and I'll show you how to wire up some outlets while we're at it. Now we're gonna be using our AC plug that has the 3 wires coming out on the other end. Run this through the back of our AC side of the panel, and I'm just gonna pull all the slack through. Get about 4 or 5 inches of slack here, and I'm going to cut this. Then I'll strip this sheathing back the same way so I can get access to these 3 wires. Green, white, and black. The front bus bar right here is where your white wire goes, and the back one right here is where your green wire goes. They actually give you an example. So this is an extra little outlet that they put in, I guess in the factory before they mail this out to you. And they have a white one going here and a green one going here. And they have a black one that's just kind of loose and hanging. That's pretty cool that they put that in there so you can't forget what goes where here. Now this is our main power line. So what I like to do is put our white one somewhere in the middle, and then I'll put our white one in right there, and then I'm gonna tighten that down. Our green one right behind it. Like I said, that leaves us with our black wire hanging here, and what we're gonna do is attach that to our breaker. So let's talk about breakers real quick. This breaker box uses what's called a 1-pole breaker, and that's a breaker that looks like this. And you can actually just buy these at pretty much any hardware store. I have 2 different kinds of these 1-pole breakers here though. So this one is gonna be our main breaker, and this is a 30 amp breaker, which is probably the wrong size for this. And the other breaker here, this is what's called a tandem breaker. And what's cool about this is if you look at it, you can see that there's 2 different independent switches on it. And what that allows you to do is take up 1 space in the breaker box. So you're saving space, which is perfect for what we need to do because, well, we're building a camper, so you need to have as much space on here as possible. Now that you understand what these are, where to get them, now we can install them. So just above our bus bars down here, we have our poles. Now you have 2 sets of poles on this, but I'm gonna start by using our left side ones. And I've never actually needed more than this side because we're using tandem breakers. This is a little guard that's gonna hold our breakers in there, but we need to get that out of the way first. So I'm gonna just use my screwdriver. So what I'm gonna do is take my 30 amp breaker that only has one breaker switch on it, and I'm gonna take my black wire from my supply cable, and on the very bottom of this breaker, there is a screw with a hole down here. But what we're gonna do is stick our black cable right in there, and then we're gonna tighten this down just the same as if it was our bus bar or anything else that we've been doing so far in this video. Actually, there's a little space that has a little ridge to it, and there's an identical ridge on here. So this is gonna kind of act like a French cleat system if you've ever used something like that. But what we're gonna do is put this onto here, so that's grabbing that way, and then we're gonna push it up, and it's gonna slide into our pole right here. We're gonna push it up, and then it grabs into place, and now that breaker is in place. And you can see now we've used all three of our wires here. We've got the green, we've got the white, and we've got the black. They're all set up and plugged into something. Now we're going to need to wire up our outlet. So we're gonna be using some outlets like this, but let's just say that you ran the cables for it in your van and you're gonna wire these up later. So I'm gonna use this triplex wire. Let's say I'm running this through the walls in the van. It's coming down through this cabinet, and then it's gonna go into this hole, and then I'm gonna pull it through the same hole that I had the main power line come through. I'm just gonna put these in the same exact way. The green goes onto the top bus bar, the white goes into the front. So the only thing that's gonna be different is the black, and it's not actually different. It's really the same, but it's a different type of breaker. So on the bottom of this breaker, you'll see that there's two different screws, and those go to each one of these breaker switches right here. So what I'm gonna do is just pick one. So I'm gonna put it on the right side, and I'm going to screw this down. Now, if you had another outlet that you were putting onto this breaker, because you can do two, you would put that other black wire on there now. But for example, we're only going to be doing one. So I'm gonna mount this the same way on here. We're gonna put this hooked piece down onto the ledge and press it up onto the pole and let it snap up into place. And now we've got our breakers mounted, and I'm not going to add any more. So I'm gonna take my little guard piece and screw that back on. You can kind of see how this works, that this is actually holding the breakers in, so that way they can't accidentally get knocked off the pole or something like that. So now we're gonna go wire up the outlet that's on the other end of this breaker that we just wired up. And I've already gone ahead and put some fork connectors on the ends of all of these. This is your outlet box. So what I'm gonna do is go behind here, and there's more punch outs. These wires through into here. So when you look at an outlet, there are a bunch of screws on the sides here. The way that I always remember where the wires go is that my green screw goes with my green wire. So let's hook that one up first. What goes right above that is going to be our white. And the reason for that is that your black is always by itself, because that is the hot. And the neutral and ground always go together, just like in our breaker box. So that just leaves our other side over here. And on this side, this is where our black goes. So I'm just gonna put this black fork connector on there and tighten this one down. And then once those are tightened down, I like to just tighten down the 2 screws that I'm not going to use, just so they're not rattling around and making noise like this all the time. And then you're gonna line up these screws with the holes on the top and bottom of your box here. And then you're just gonna tighten those down as well. And there we go, our outlet is wired up. Now obviously this box will be inside of your wall. I have an outlet cover right here that doesn't match because it's black, but I'll put it on there to show you that that is how that will look when it's all hooked up and you have your nice clean wall behind there. All right, so I'm gonna pull my wall off here. Just get that out of the way for a second. My power station back into the box. Then I've got my 120 and my 12 volt plugged in. Now I'm just gonna make this look a little bit more pretty by putting a nice cover on it. So this box comes with this cover right here. And this is gonna go over this, and it's gonna allow us to label all of these breakers and these fuses. Now if I hold that up, that should fit. Screw these in. You can use a pen or something, or I actually like to use a label printer and print out some labels for these. So I'm just gonna say outlet on this one, because that's what that one is. And I'm also gonna fill this out and say, what was our top one? That was our light. And the next one was our fan. And so these are labeled like 1, 2, 3, 4, and remember we put them on to 3 and 4. And it also has a line for the amps, so you can actually label how big these fuses are supposed to be. This is not supposed to be 10 and 15, so I'm not gonna write that in there. And the last thing that we do is put this door on. So this little door just has these knobs on it on both sides, and there's a slot on this, so we just stick the knobs into those slots. Now that door is connected, and we just push it up, and it's a little push to close. So now it's covered up and it looks nice and professional. So now we're gonna turn the power station on and make sure that everything works. So if we look at the screen, we know that that's turned on, so we're gonna turn on our 12 volt just like before. We already know that that works because we tested it out, but we have not tested this down here. So I'm gonna hit our button right here. That's gonna turn on all of these outlets right here. But we need to turn on our breaker as well. So if we turn on our main breaker, that means that that bar up there, remember where we put the poles in, that whole metal bar is now energized. So if I hit this breaker up, that means that now this outlet is live. These are the batteries for my camera that I'm filming on right now. And my batteries are always dead. So let's plug them in and see if they will charge up. So that's plugged in and looks like they are charging. So this outlet works because we've got our breakers turned on. Let's just double check our 12 volt stuff over here. We've got the light is still on, the switch still works, and our fan is here. I heard it beep earlier, so let's hit the power, and that's running. So look at that, we've got 12 volt stuff running and 120 volt stuff running at the same time. And that's basically how the whole thing works. Oh, last thing, I almost forgot. We were gonna put the top onto this box. So there you go. That's the whole You might be wondering, like, hey, you know, the 12 volt setup that I did is all good because there's only just that cigarette lighter plug right on the front of the power station. But why would you run your own wires for outlets if there's all of these outlets sitting right on the front of the power station? And you know what? That is a good question. You totally can just run outlets straight from the front of the power station out to different areas of your van. In fact, if you want to do that, hold on, let me find it. These are these little things that are used for like conference rooms. And basically they're just got an outlet on one side that you just plug in, and on the other side, it just gives you these ports on here like an outlet. It just doesn't look as professional like being put in your wall. And also, if you don't know how to hardwire real outlets, then if you choose to be on the internet like me doing builds, then people will make fun of you if you use something like this, or if you just run extension cords all around your van for different appliances you want to use. There's nothing wrong with doing it. People will just think it's a little bit crude. And also, I literally spent 80 cents on this outlet. They're extremely cheap, so the only thing you really have to pay for is the wires for all of this stuff. So I would just go ahead and do it. It only takes you like a couple extra hours when you're doing the wiring and stuff. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's why I designed this box, so that you have access to the cords on the front of it anyway. I want to say again, a big thank you to Anker SOLIX for sponsoring this little project so that I could teach you guys how I do this. So thank you guys for watching this all the way to the end. Hopefully you learned something. If not, go ahead and tell me everything that I did wrong if you know everything, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.